Hi, everybody. I'm Haley Mitchell Haugen. I'm the editor of Sheila-Na-Gig Editions and Sheila-Na-Gig Online. Welcome tonight to our celebration of the publication of Noise of the World by poet George Franklin of Miami. Tonight, George will be reading his work, and he's joined by some open mic readers from Sheila-Na-Gig Online. I hope you enjoy the reading. George Franklin's books of poetry include Traveling for No Good Reason, winner of the Sheila-Na-Gig Editions competition in 2018, Travel of the Angel of Sorrow by Blue Cedar Press, and Among the Ruins by Katakana Editores. And he is the co-translator, along with the author Ximena Gomez, of Last Day, also by Katakana. His poem Agua won the 2020 Stephen A. Dibasi Poetry Prize, and his poems and essays have appeared in many journals, including the Woven Tale Press magazine, The Wild Word, Broadside Press, The Threepenny Review, Sheila-Na-Gig Online, Salamander, Pedestal Magazine, Kajibi, and the American Journal of Poetry. He practices law in Miami, and prior to the pandemic, taught poetry workshops in Florida State Prison. Let's welcome poet George Franklin. Welcome, George. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Haley. And just one other note, it is a beautiful book, but the reason why it's such a beautiful book is that Haley put together the most amazing cover and book design for it. So thank you so much. And her editing was wonderful also. It's really interesting to do one of these Sheila-Na-Gig readings because it's such a comfortable venue. So many of us have heard each other read before, and I feel like I'm reading to family, and especially when there's so many friends, who are here. So thank you all for coming. The book is divided into 5 sections, and the first section is basically love poems and poems that grew out of a couple of trips that Ximena Gomez and I made to Colombia back in 2019 when her father was dying, and then afterwards for the funeral. And I'm going to start out with reading one of those poems. It's called Eurydice. I'm always afraid I'll turn around to find you gone. Eurydice in a flowered dress, oversized bag on your shoulder, falling back into the lobby of your building, elevator retreating up to the 10th floor, you swallowed by the hallway and the door as afternoon light fades over the railroad tracks, the graffitied buildings to the west. But I'm not Orpheus, and you're very much alive. In Colombia, the day after your father's funeral, we walked between the tables of a market where you warned me in a serious voice to bury my cell phone deep in my front pocket to fend off thieves. But there weren't any thieves, or at least we didn't see them. Just piles of ripe berries, plantains, and yellow granadilla, opening to sweet gray flesh and black seeds. How long were we there, sampling mangoes, staring at straw baskets, meat hanging from iron hooks? Persephone ate 6 pomegranate seeds, and for eternity sits by Hades' side for half the year. She was the one who begged her husband to let Eurydice leave, Orpheus's song still echoing from those walls where the dead, having drunk from Lethe, forget the bright world and sleep. When we emerged, your bag heavy with fruit, the sun was still at the sky's center, the season unchanged, the traffic thick with taxis and trucks, with motorcycles and those jeeps that carry passengers to the places taxis won't go. There were televisions in shop windows, cars for sale on credit, billboards with bottles of tequila and aguardiente. Later, in our hotel room, we showered off the sweat and held each other. If I were Orpheus, I would have looked back even sooner. In Miami, I take your hand as we walk at night along Biscayne, clouds reflecting the city's light as they move east out over the bay. Only by touching do we know we're still here. The second section is called Ghosts, and it deals more with memory and losses, um, which we all have. Um, I was puzzled as to which one of these to read, really. I guess it's hard to choose between losses. Um, I'm going to read a poem called Nowhere. All the losses we never knew we had clamber up our rib cages, sure-footed as only grief can be. We stretch out adolescent bodies on swings in the park, humid nights growing black around our movements, arms loosely holding onto the chains as we fly toward becoming someone else, adults we won't recognize in the mirror. Below, empty beer cans lie on the grass in a random pattern, like the sticks Chinese fortune tellers used to find a hexagram in the I Ching. We all had futures, some shorter and sadder than others. There was a girl who died young. I don't know from what. She wrote poems she never showed me or anyone else. We made out once by Cross Lake, getting high and avoiding cottonmouths rustling in the bushes. She was busted a couple of nights later. I managed to get away just in time and watched the arrest from behind a tree, afraid to move. I took a taxi home and crawled in through a window. The police knew I'd been there, but didn't have enough to pull me in. I don't know how many other times I got lucky. Friends did time in Angola or Huntsville in Texas. I went to college up north, then to Britain and France, walking through the stone basement at the Louvre in the morning with no one around, just me and the Assyrian gods, buying new clothes, books of poetry, taking the train to Edinburgh, where I lived above a Scottish pub, a dusty Springfield imitator singing loudly till I fell asleep. When I got back, my friends all said I'd lost my Louisiana accent. I sounded like someone from nowhere. I'm sort of at a loss also to explain the section of the book, A Fairer House Than Prose. I suppose it's made up more of poems that take a certain pleasure in uh, older poems that are out there, artwork, that sort of thing. Um, the title poem of the section, A Fairer House Than Prose, of course, comes from Emily Dickinson's famous line about I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose. So maybe the whole section is devoted to possibilities. A fairer house than prose. Maybe the now extinct dodo bird will flap its useless wings in the glass case of the Natural History Museum. Maybe highways will roll up like yoga mats till they crumble beneath their own weight, spilling asphalt, cars, gas stations, and rest stops onto an endless prairie. Maybe I'll open the mailbox today and find Dante's Paradiso wrapped inside itself, a red enfolded rose. Maybe someone's heart will literally break, a ventricle cracking from sorrow and desire never manifest. Maybe there'll be a knock at the door, and on the doorstep, a burning bush, a voice calling me by a name I don't recognize. Maybe I'll get in line at the movie theater down the street and see dead philosophers approaching the ticket window. Maybe they'll holler to me, "Hey, we're saving you a seat." The next section of the book is called The Winter Ducks. And those poems are they're a combination of domestic and political for the most part. One that is still kind of puzzling to me, I don't know what caused the event, but is based on something that happened in the house one day. It's called Without Explanation. Today, the house was filled with dying bees. I don't know where they came from, maybe the air conditioning, but they hummed furiously, banging at the sliding glass door, blinded by the afternoon sun, some of them trapped between one pane and another. I tried sweeping them out with the green broom I keep in the closet. I tried putting out a bowl of sugared water as well, but the bees kept piling up on the floor or floated helpless in the sugared water. Later, making dinner, I found I could still hear them, that small cacophony of confusion, defeat, as their delicate wings smashed hopelessly against the overhead lights in the kitchen. Here's another poem from this section. No, I'm sorry, it's from the next section, Noise of the World, which has to do with issues about history imposing itself on us, which we've seen a lot of in the last few months. Man, this poem is called Falling. And I think it's, well, it's a memory, maybe it's a loss, maybe it should have been in the section to do with losses, I'm not sure, but falling. None of them are left anymore, the people who came to my parents' cocktail parties, the ones who drank wild turkey on the rocks or Johnny Walker Red, who mixed ginger ale with whiskey and told stories I could overhear. Some, when they fell, made more noise than others, so the whole neighborhood knew. But some fell quietly, the way they wanted to fall, so that almost no one noticed they had fallen. Their television sets stayed on for days as all the constellations swung in the sky as though nothing had happened. And the last poem in that section goes back to the lockdown from last April, and it's called Breaking Curfew for Ximena Gomez. It's a rainy afternoon in Miami. A lone crow calls from a palm tree. The light filtered by clouds is so blue that rooftops and fences look like they're underwater. The dog has no interest in going outside. After lunch, we worked on translating your poem, the one about Bishop Barclay and how uneasy we can become when no one is there to observe us. You described being alone on a train platform, and reading it, I was there with you in a moment where we might or might not be real. These nights when we walk together, the streets are empty, the way they are in your poem. The lights of the shopping mall seem pointless. I don't know if the department store at the corner will ever reopen. From the other side of the park, it looks like a white church, your phrase, that no one visits. We stop for a minute to look down the canal. Even the ducks have gone. Only a slick black surface borders the houses like a medieval moat. A few backyard lights shine to deter the invaders who never arrive. The parking lots are empty. Even the night watchman no longer makes rounds. I haven't seen his white pickup in months. Last night we heard a car go by, playing gospel on the radio. Maybe the rapture happened and no one knew it. And we live in a world God gave up on, or like the Gnostics say, turn the job over to someone else. You can't tell from these streets. They inspire thoughts of abandonment, not comfort. If I saw someone walking toward us, you and I would move to the other side of the street. It doesn't pay to take risks. One night, a few weeks ago, we saw the figure of a person sleeping on one of the benches in the park. We moved to the banks of the canal to avoid him. As far as I know, he hasn't been back, and we never see stray dogs or cats either. Outside, the afternoon has already turned to evening. The sky is a dark blue behind the darker silhouette of the tree limbs. You used the word silhouette in your poem, and here I am stealing it for mine. I would apologize, but you are still busy translating. It'll be time soon to make dinner, then perhaps a walk. I want to read one more poem that Barbra Stable asked me to read, and it's called Clean Sheets. And Barbara pointed out that I apparently like to use the word sheets a lot in poems. I have a few key words that keep coming back over and over again. Coffee is one of them. Dick Raven pointed that out a few years ago, and it's still true. Sheets is another one. So certain words recur. Clean sheets. I just made the bed with clean sheets. They're wrinkled, but washed and fresh smelling. The weave a little rough against my hands. When you get here, I'll fix coffee. Yours with steamed milk, foamy. Mine dark, tasting of burnt sugar. Reminding me of the night sky in another latitude. That neighborhood where we walked. The moon still not up over the hills. The low rooftops, hotel signs, and shuttered windows. From somewhere, voices, music, a dog barking behind a high white wall, my lips touching your neck after dinner. We'll turn back the sheets, slip in beside each other, our days still with us, scents we can't get rid of, sandalwood clinging to your nightgown, lemon peel, onions on my fingers. When we touch, we could be anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, George, so much. Just beautiful. Makes me love the book all over again.
Thank you, Haley.
And as I recall, when we were working on the manuscript, it had a different title, right? And I think I said, no, you use the word noise a lot in the book. Maybe that should be the title, right? And I don't remember what the original title was. So
I don't remember at this point either, but you were right.
Something about mountains, right? Blue
Mountains
mountain.
blue as rain. Mountains blue as rain. Yeah. It's a line from Agua.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful image, but it wasn't the title for the book.
No, you were correct.
I know. Okay. I'd like to take a few minutes and just invite some comments on George's work, or if you have questions for him. I think we have enough time to have a short conversation if anyone would like to comment or ask a question. Right.
I have a question. I wonder, George, if your working in two languages has influenced, working in Spanish has influenced your writing in English. Play back and forth.
Interesting. I don't really work in Spanish. I mean, Ximena does the heavy lifting with the Spanish translations. I help get them into English. But to do that, I mean, I've got a little bit of Spanish, un poquito, but that's it. There's certain things that you think about that are unavoidable, like how hard it is to translate present participles in English into Spanish. Mm-hmm. That's not going to really work. So we rely on present participles so much in modern American poetry. So it's kind of a little complicated there.
So George, do we ever get to meet Ximena on one of these readings?
Yes. In fact, she's on here somewhere. She's in the next room, so there won't be feedback from her computer. I don't know where to. I don't know how to do. I can't. I'm not a Zoom master here, so but she's on there. If Ximena, if you unmute yourself
or on the video
and say something, I think it will show you.
Yes, I am Ximena, so I'm not supposed to read today, but I might in a future instance. I don't know if we organize maybe a reading for from our bilingual books or something, maybe. I don't know.
That'd be fun. It's nice to meet you.
Ximena, incidentally, has a new book that will be coming out from Torremosas in Madrid.
I think we can make that reading happen. And Ximena's work is also featured in Sheila-Na-Gig as well. So we love her. All right. Any other questions or comments for George before we jump into our open mic tonight?
I've got one. I really enjoyed it, George. I like your work. I don't have the book. I'm going to order it today. But I like the blend of your personal with the really philosophical, classical, and political, social. An easy blend. Any one of those can kill. And you have your own style and your own voice. Very nice.
Thank you, Stan. Thank
News
you.
of the World sounds like a lesser title than Noise of the World.
Yeah. Especially if in an English tabloid. I was worried about that, but
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm not familiar with your work. This is the first time I've heard it, and I just loved it, George. Literally the ending of every poem, it was perfect. And endings are so difficult. And like the other gentleman was just saying, there's such a wonderful blend of the deeply personal and place, and the sense of you almost love of place, of person, of your life. And I find that very, very affirming, especially in this day and age. So thank you so much.
thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
There's also just a wonderful, George, a wonderful narrative quality and a kind of ease of how you move from subject to subject. There's a kind of deceptive quality there. There's so much going on in these poems. So
Thank you. Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to meet you, incidentally, and
Exactly.
other than in print. Thank you.
Exactly. Likewise.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I am going to go ahead and switch gears, and we will move into open mic mode. Okay, I'm gonna get the words out here. And so again, we have a great lineup of open readers tonight, and the folks that you will be hearing are most of them are published in our winter issue of Sheila-Na-Gig Online, and many of them have appeared in multiple issues as well. So if you are a reader and fan of Sheila-Na-Gig Online, you will certainly recognize some of these voices. And so I'm so happy to have you all here. We have 10 readers lined up. And as I said at the beginning of the reading, I'm going to stop recording after 10 readers, but if I have people who couldn't get on that list and you want to read, heck, we can just stay up all night and share some stuff. So I'm willing to do that with you all. Okay. Our first reader tonight have had the pleasure of hearing much more of her work through some Ohio venues that we have in common. And so I'm very, very pleased to be able to introduce to you Pauletta Hansel. You're first, Pauletta.
Thank you so much, Haley. I'm delighted to be here. This is my first publication in Sheila-Na-Gig, and I'm really excited to have had poems chosen. Especially the first poem especially has been one of my little favorite poems, and so I'm glad that it showed up in your journal. It's called Dirt. What people in town remember about my family's home was the dirt in the fenced front yard where no grass could stay grown, worn down by the feet of the kids Mom kept in the daycare where I worked too the summer I was 15, in my shorts and tank top, sitting out on the rock wall that bisected the dirt of the yard from the dirt of the driveway. Once an old woman driving stopped. I don't know how old is old, maybe the old I am now, older than dirt, carved crevices around her mouth to tell me she once had a waist like mine, steep sloping down, though her ass sat up higher. I have been thinking about dirt, or maybe the rock along the road I never noticed I'd noticed growing up there, sandstone and shell striated with coal that always looked wet, even in summer, grass a paler brown than the dirt, which, depending on where in the county you were, might be a gravelly, sandy, stony, silty loam. Maybe she said buttocks. Probably she said butt. I didn't know what to say to her. I had nothing to say. On the road out of town, Kentucky 15 to the Parkway to the highway, an hour to there, and you're almost to Lexington, where there's something to do, not sit surrounded by kids and old and dirt, rough, broken, mountainous, deeply dissected. I didn't know that I knew how the farther you got up the road, the coal is gone. There's clay in the rock, and the grass is greener. I mean, really, it is on the other side. And then the second poem that I'll read is called The Road. There is one patch of Route 15 just north of what was home, where whatever weather is, there is more of it. Cloudburst, blizzard, smear of sun that finds its way through needle eye of mountain. You've pulled the tangled thread of road with you this far. Go on. No one waits, hand up to curtain, listening for your graveled turn. There's only past throwing its shadow on the lane that sends you back toward what is gone. Your eyes will soon adjust. When did you know it's not enough to carry splintered pieces underneath your skin? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I'm muted. No, here I am. I'm still here. Thank you so much, Pauletta. And I thought those poems went so well together too. When I put them in Sheila-Na-Gig, they really do pair well together. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. Our next reader tonight has been in Sheila-Na-Gig a number of times, and this is Paul Alechko. And Paul, I'm not sure if I'm saying your last name correctly, so please let me know if I'm not, but welcome to Paul.
Thank you, and that actually was correct. It's Ilechko, it's just the way you said it. Nice to be here. So I have two poems to read, one from the Winter edition and one from my new book. I'll show you in a minute. The one from the Winter edition is called Make Me a Vertical for Louise Nevelson. It's based on, or inspired by, a trip I took down to West Virginia for Thanksgiving 2 years ago. And we were hiking down there, climbing the Maryland Heights, things like that. And I also went to DC for one night and saw a play about Louise Nevelson. And these two things came together in my mind about verticality, the verticality of her work, the verticality of the hiking, and it came together into one piece somehow. I'm not quite sure it fits together, but it's kind of written, it's in two voices, so I'll try and make that clearer as I read it. Make me a vertical for Louise Nevelson. It must be a vertical, she said. It must be upright, nailed on, sanded, and painted. I have a bone appetite, she said. Keep me standing erect. And we climbed 2,000 feet in the cold air of November, overlooking another state than the one in which we currently existed. The bones of our legs engaged in the brain-eye continuum. It stands as if it had feet, she said, toweringly vertical, boxed and built up. Life with me, she said, is so solidly wooden, so charred and restless, block upon block. But we crossed a bridge, transversal over the slow pulsation of river. Not tidal, not yet, but still emerging. At the junction, still 1 foot before another, still a motion across this latitude. Bridges can never work for me, she said, not in their horizontal, their lattice nature, their elongation, their span of bone against bone. It must, she said, oh, it surely must, make me a vertical. And the second piece is from my new chapbook, just came out recently, called Paid Sections from Alien Butter Press. I'll give you a link. And this one is called Breathless Wave and Breathless Particle. It was previously published, I believe it's in Juxtaprose magazine. You should tell me in the back somewhere. Yep, it was. Breathless Wave and Breathless Particle. A particle, or so they say, is also a wave. A simple flick of the wrist and there it is. An invisible stream that hovers as it twists and drifts across the breeze. Breath, seeding substance, a coiled invention, as smoke is transformed into plasma. And bodies are built like golems, filled with the currency of life. Your body then is both particulate and waveform, and so is mine. Our goal becoming the act of synchronization, two waves crashing together on a rocky shore. Our breathing, an act of continual creation. Our communication, the dot dash dot of the elemental code. As sender and receiver both, we interchange a fluidity of surge and swell. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. It's so lovely to hear everybody's voices. You know, I get pictures when you send work to Sheila-Na-Gig and I publish them, and I get these, you know, pictures with the bios and everything. When you hear the people's voice, you rethink everything. You know, it's wonderful to hear how you think about the words and the language and the line breaks. It's just wonderful for everybody. Thank you. Our next reader tonight is Karen George.
Hello. Thank you, Haley, for having this reading and for inviting us to read our poems that were in the latest issue. This poem is called Georgia O'Keeffe, Zinnias, 1921. White, soft pink, raspberry, painted against pale, dreamy blue, fuzzy, as if viewed through wavy glass or a glare of sun, edges rounded except for a green stem, a leaf blade, sex organs flecked yellow at the center, one zinnia's lower petals a silvery array of many curved moons starting their spent descent to earth. Sweet blear of summer heat, how objects look when you fall asleep, fluid as you slip into the dream where your husband returns to life, body no longer scarred, lungs unhampered, spine perfectly aligned, lips supple plums, and you wake, a sweet, bitter tang on your tongue, as if you'd bitten into plush, heady petals. Excuse me. This second poem I wrote very recently, and it's for my mother, whose birthday was a few days ago. She died last March, and it was inspired by Bertha Wegman's painting Forest in Tyrol. The passage ahead. Straight-trunked cedars pillar above the woman with auburn hair, the color of my mother's before gray came. Beneath her feet, spotty green, whelmed with waves of russet needles, the hem of her long navy dress skims, a whiskery lullaby. The forest is thick, dark, but sun sifts soft like flower on her hair, on her shoulders, glints the lace of her wrapped shawl. Spindly branches, thin as twigs, bridge the path above her, silvered by light into a gossamer spider web. She enters the cusp of the tunnel, hands clasped behind her back. The scent of cinnamon tickles her nose. Slow down, she whispers. There's time to immerse in the marvels before you. She's ahead of me on the trail, but I feel her face flooded with wonder. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. It's so sensuous. You can't go wrong with Georgia O'Keeffe, right? There's just so many images that you can play with there. Lovely. All right, our next reader tonight is a frequent contributor to Sheila-Na-Gig Online. This is Stan Sandwell-Rubin. Stan?
Myself, right? Okay, thank you, Haley. I don't often run to be part of a reading, but I've been to so many Zoom readings, but this one's special to me. Thank you for all your work. You've gathered such an intelligent, talented group. I'm proud to be in this family. The one, I'm going to read my poem from the issue, and I was delighted to have it taken. It's slightly different for me because it's pretty autobiographical, which is not my usual style. I'm a lyric poet. I don't write long. This is like a page and maybe 2 lines slopped over. It's to one of my 2 Russian grandfathers, the laborer. Max, and it's called Max's Garage, and it draws on my memory of the man, and you'll hear what's in it, my relationship to him and his garage. It's in 4 short sections. I'm only mentioning it because I'm going to pause briefly between them. It only totals 28 lines total, so don't worry about it. It's not the Iliad. Max's Garage, for my grandfather. His leather thumbs popped metal caps from bottles, yet his hands did the work of precision, carefully opening the possibilities of wood to take a shape we desire. Despite wood's hardness, despite the tendency of all things to resist us, the way his tools resisted me, my clumsy touch. Nevertheless, he gifted me with hammers, chisels, saws I looked at fearfully, like sharks in a story. He tried to teach me how tape measure and T-square can make shapes true, how the green liquid trapped in the eye of the level is a prophet of certainty, if one can only learn to read it right, the way he did. He said little, knowing little of my language, bookish American schoolboy who dreamed of being a sports star, yet couldn't see the difference a 16th or 32nd makes in everything. He grunted approval when things worked, grunted disapproval when they didn't, and went on. A craftsman never accepts imperfection as final. Standing next to him in the noisy garage, reeking of cigarettes that finally killed him, I covered my ears when the table saw growled, and he pushed me back from the threat of the blade.
Thank you, Stan.
I've wanted to write a poem to bringing that particular grandfather back. That's the only one I ever did. Anyway, here's a little poem. The newest poem I wrote, so you know how that is. I'll throw it out, but it's slightly in honor of Sheila-Na-Gig because I'm interested in many mysteries, including the Eleusinian mysteries and the religion of women at that time, the mysterious rites that were far less orgiastic than are shown in movies, but were serious to the Greeks, and we don't know all that much about them. So here's a little poem because I'm interested in the way when we write or do any art, we are transported. We are, whatever you're writing about, we are connected in a different way to the universe. So humor me when this has never been read and was just written. It's 2, 3, 4, 5 little stanzas of 4 lines each. And I'm certainly interested in the mysteries of individuality that while we inhabit this plane, we're in these bodies. This is yours. It's called This Is Yours. The right takes place in darkness. The tools are assembled and your body is one. So is Earth, your mother. The pieces of the ritual are mostly unknown because they are your secret. Experts have worked on this. We know the masks, the role they must have played. Fasting, drinking the potion, depositing or taking objects from the sacred place where no one else is permitted. Those outside purify themselves. They must perform their own. The obscene chants they holler, the insistent rhythm within, you know you will live forever. Music, like a snake, enfolds you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Thanks so much for coming. Our next reader, I've also had the privilege of publishing more than once. This is Penelope Moffatt of The White Cat. Where's that kitty cat?
She's in my lap now. She's quiet. This is actually the first time I've been in Sheila-Na-Gig.
Oh, I didn't know.
I've been reading it for a while, seeing various poems and really enjoying them. And I was very happy when you took my poem for this issue.
I felt like you were one of those familiar people who, well, you fit right in, so welcome.
So the poem that's in the winter issue is called Pendulum, and it's about one of my early jobs. My first job, I worked in a bakery, then I worked for Pioneer Chicken, And then I got a job at Kmart, which was hitting the big time for an adolescent. Pendulum. At Kmart, each new hire was trained first on the registers, and then they gave you your own zone. I was draperies and yardage, learned to handle damask, cotton swags, and valances, how to cut cloth more or less precisely, how to trim a blind. But whenever lines of carts grew long, the call came over the PA. All checkers to the front, and I'd have to leave my post, go ring up sales again. On one side of drapes was sporting goods, and on the other shoes. Tall dark yogi flirted with me by the boots and flip-flops. Pale Dave gleamed mischief beneath beard and glasses, sneered me with his puns. I swung between the two, the one who taught me how to kiss, the one who slipped the hook.
Thank you.
And the other poem I'd like to read was published in the December issue of Verse Virtual, and I see a few Verse Virtual friends here. This poem was written the first week of November. I started writing it that Sunday just before the election. And it contains a statistic which is now way out of date, but I'm going to leave it alone just to remind you where we were in early November. It's called Beautiful Day. Thank you to the fruit fly that tried repeatedly to kiss me when I sat down at this desk. Thank you to the cat who tried to upchuck in my slippers while I watched A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood last night. Thank you to the motorcycle roaring up the street each afternoon unmufflered and the maskless smokers on the corner. It's a beautiful day in my neighborhood, despite the 230,000 Americans dead in 8 months because the president cares only for himself. Thank you to the maples and the sycamores, the pepper trees and palms I see each time I walk the better neighborhood next to mine. Thank you to the metropolis of finches chirping as they flit through a magnolia tree's leaves at dusk. Thank you to the ventilator I hope never to be tethered to, and thank you to the brave ones who would do the tethering. Thank you to my legs, which take me where I want to go for now.
Thank you. That's where I've seen you around. First virtual, other places, right? I feel like old pals. Thanks, Penelope. All right, our next reader tonight is Joanna Clarkson. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the first poem I'm going to read is the one that was in the winter issue, and I was so thrilled to have this. This is one of those poems that I started writing maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it's gone through many iterations. Like someone wrote about, I love the poem about the grandfather. This is about my maternal grandmother, who was a psychic medium. She was a very complicated lady, and she read fortunes with ordinary playing cards. And the deck she carried was old and worn, and it was, you probably see them, they still have them. It's got the blue angel on the back. It's a cherub with wings. There are red ones and there are blue ones, and hers was blue. This is called Blue Bicycle Fortune Deck for Esther. Her cards were peddled by angels. Try again, excuse me. Her cards were peddled by blue angels. They rode in the womb of her pocket. Her cards mocked luck, thumb worn. Her cards slept on kitchen shelves and smelled of onions and ginger. The angel on the bicycle was naked. Her cards seldom fell in love, and when they did, they came with a warning. Her cards were bartered from gypsies. Her cards wore overalls, not suits. Her cards were hers the way a cat chooses its own. Her cards fell into place with an old song that didn't quite rhyme. She preferred 7s and 9s. Spades had the mind of the devil. Her cards could not cheat, bent corners healed by morning. Her cards ignited dreams. Truth to her cards was a matter of aces. Her cards could not be stolen even by her sisters. The 9 of Cups was her wish card. The court cards were real people, most of them poor. Her cards were cut by the left hand. Her cards were born carrying messages. The night she died, they disappeared, leaving a few blue feathers caught in the spokes of the world. All of that is pretty much true. So I thought for my second poem, I'd read one on the other end of the spectrum. It's about my granddaughter, and it just appeared in Autumn Sky Daily, as opposed to the Blue Bicycle poem, which took me years to put together. This poem came out kind of in whole cloth. And it's a true poem too. It's called Teaching My Granddaughter to Read, an ecology poem. She rejects the overused, colorless schoolroom words, the single syllables, the rude guttural stutter of short A, E, and U. Instead, she memorizes the blossoming pages of my gardening catalog: chrysanthemum, nasturtium, hyacinth, phonics of stamen and pistil. I explain words are patterned on sound and shape. Readers need to know the hum of M and the hollow O in order to master books. She looks at me like I've lost my mind, missed the whole point. She enunciates perennial, herbaceous. Not for her, the cat and dog pages, mother and father chapters looking nothing like her family. She continues to delve, never guesses. Recognizes days later, vernal and autumnal, labors to train phrases together, after first frost, thin to 12 inches apart, and water. We both work hard on water with its abundant, good drainage and irrigate at evening. She wakes eager for the glossy pages with photos of last May and all the Junes to come. Our fingers leave smudges where willing seeds sprout. Why wouldn't an author write lithospermum and hellebore? Why shouldn't someone 6 learn how Earth is meant to be read? Thank you.
I would have taken that one too. Great. Wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
So I'm very pleased to announce our next reader, Barbra Stable, whose book Imagine a Town won Sheila-Na-Gig's 2019 poetry contest. And you can see a picture of the cover behind her framed on the wall. I love it when you read and we can see that picture behind you, which is just great. And Barbra, as I said, is also now helping me as an editor of Sheila-Na-Gig and really just helping me do the work of reading those poems and getting through them. And thank you so much for that, Barbra. All right, go ahead, take us away.
Thank you, Haley. Well, reading the poems is a real pleasure. And the other real pleasure is seeing everyone and hearing you read the poems from the winter issue. So it's really a delight. So the first poem I'm going to read 2 seasonal poems. And the first one is from the book Imagine a Town, called Winter. And this is inspired by a fragment from Sappho. And the first, that inspiration is the first line of the poem, which is, winter is a country. Winter. Winter is a country that settles in your limbs, stirs the joints, mortar, pestle, and your own weather shivers against the changes as it takes up residence in the vintage bones. If not winter, it's your years that hush the blood, cooling the snow-pebbled skin as your own paler season seeps in by degrees with little fuss. If winter, you take it all in. What choice but to absorb the fading green-tinged light like absinthe, color of forgetting, first and last color of the world. And the next poem is also a seasonal poem. It's a snow poem, hot off the keyboard. I just wrote this actually the day before yesterday. So this is the Kingdom of Snow, inspired by my love of winter and my wish for a true winter with the snows that we used to have way back when. The Kingdom of Snow. The winters of my childhood live in a globed kingdom, an unsullied world of snow forts, 2 heads higher than we stood, long slopes, padded with flurried day upon flurried day, time a bright tunnel. I am losing count of the seasons. Our snowblower languishes in a corner of the garage, still, shiny red, its paddles at the ready, yet no great sprays arc to the lawn, no snowmen or angels. In this long interlude, since snow draped from tree branch to roof to street, since the ice prismed the morning, I miss the spell of that particular blue-white light borrowed from the skin along a newborn's spine, bottle of milk on a moonlit sill. Paper white, pure, that kingdom marked only by the tracks of woodland animals and sled runners. Now that I'm advised to avoid extremes of heat and cold and any excess of excitement, I long for that commotion in my chest, where my heart kicks as I clutch the sides of a silver saucer, plunging and spinning at the same time towards some steep, bottomless joy. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear new work too. Thank you so much. All right, and our next reader tonight is another one of our Sheila-Na-Gig Editions authors, coming to us from Sitka, Alaska. And we recently published her book, Curating the House of Nostalgia. So welcome, Kirsten Christensen.
Hi, everybody. Haley, thank you for the opportunity to read. I am so, when somebody asked me the other day, how will you look back on this period of time, this lockdown and 9 months of, just waiting for COVID to be finished and run its course. And I have to say, it's been these gatherings, whether it's reading, it's been Zoom, strangely enough, but it's gathering with other poets, it's reading and sharing work that, is important. And I think that's really how I'll remember this time. I've been looking forward to hearing George read from his new book, which is actually the folded book that's kind of by my by my chair. So I read a couple poems every night from George's book, and it's just such a joy to read. And so I thought tonight I would just share a couple more poems from curating. And so I dug into the section that deals with sky poems. It's titled Astral. And so I have 2 poems from there, fairly short, but I thought, I'll read those. The first one is titled Harvest Moon Obad. I woke this morning before the break of dawn, certain to catch a glimpse of the bright moon's path, however fleeting in its long night's run. As the way of a rainforest, a drapery of clouds obscured the sky's window. Rooibos in hand, I settled to watch the time lapse of crater sky casting light upon another day. I ponder the soggy garden, the onions that need pulling, the peas and their picking. I ponder the days once called summer. And I do live in a rainforest, so I can't remember the last time we had a real bright, sunny, blue sky day. Well, that's just our winter, so lots of rain. The second one comes right after in the collection, and it's titled Charged Particles. And my late husband and I actually taught up in Barrow, which is now renamed Utqiagvik. And living in a place that has 24-hour darkness in the winter is quite an adventure. So charged particles, nothing but north wind, black coffee night sky patterned by quartz chipped stars. Fortified by red wine, chunked chocolate, our pre-ski aperitif warmed the blood. Wrapped in Arctic gear, we crossed and looped the ice-fast lagoon, glissading parallel to the Chukchi Sea. Shuffle and glide of cross-country skis, soundtracked by laughter at our dogs, unwilling skijors. Laughter at the brittle hollow burst of 30 below, of home far from home, that midnight crack of loneliness shelved and distant. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Kirsten. I always say that. Kirsten. Kirsten. Okay, I have two more readers tonight. Our next reader is another reader I've become familiar with through some of our Ohio Zoom gatherings and different meetings. And she is our current poet laureate of the city of Athens. And so let's welcome Wendy Mcvicker.
Thank you so much. I feel honored to be in this group. Who was it who said, Stan said, intelligent, talented crowd. It's quite something to be part of it and to hear you all. I could write a paper in the chat for every single one of you, but I can't, of course, because I want to keep listening. But I hope you all know this has been just one firework after another. So I also feel very honored this was my first appearance in Sheila-Na-Gig, and that is really exciting to me. Thank you, Haley. And so I'm going to read an older poem and then one of the poems that's in the winter issue. So, mermaids. There were fabrics we could not touch without shivering. Red velvet that flew away from our hands like a breath of glacial air. Taffeta, its hum and sheen. Slippery chenille, pink and white and blue, sometimes all three, with garlands breaking the pattern of wavy stripes. And fur, not a fabric strictly, a pelt, a dead animal's skin, crackling with resentment and pain. What to wear when every pleat and ruffle told stories we could not bear to hear? Let our mothers wrap themselves in this stuff. We dreamed of becoming mermaids, draped in seaweed and glittery scales, our lips releasing bubbles in towers of light. Naked, glassy green, cool, impenetrable. So George said, words recur. I think that's true for all of us. And it's kind of interesting to notice the words that recur if you start looking for them. So this poem was in Sheila-Na-Gig Winter Edition, and I feel so honored that it was taken. Thank you. This is called The Bones Are Blue. The bones are blue and come from the sea, or gold, smoothed or roughened by sand. They are dream bones not to be seen, but she craves them. She knows their beauty, their latent power. She hears their song, a distant strum of gold wire, a chime as dry as desert wind. The bones are vessels for carrying emptiness, and she wants an end to wanting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So wonderful. Great to hear you read that poem. Just love it. All righty, and our last open mic reader tonight, I know from Sheila-Na-Gig. She's a frequent contributor to Sheila-Na-Gig, but we also see each other around the venues on Zoom. And I'm currently living in Russell, Kentucky, but Betsy Mars is living in where I grew up in Torrance, California. And somehow we missed each other there and found each other here. So that's interesting. So Betsy, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, thank you, Haley. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I put on these headphones and they've been a little bit inconsistent. Thank you so much. I was so lucky to find Sheila-Na-Gig a couple of years ago, and then I missed when you came out and visited at the workshop that I'm in with Donna Hilbert. So, and now we've been in the pandemic ever since. So anyway, I'm kind of, coming after all of you. It's pretty daunting, but you're all just so wonderful, and I'm really grateful to be here. And being last also gave me time to change my mind about 10 times about what I wanted to read, but I'm going to go with, I decided the first one I know for sure is the poem that I had in the winter issue, which is a pandemic poem, or was written during the pandemic. And unfortunately, we're having this experience again, the return of the termites. After it was agreed that things had gone too far, we brought in outside counsel. By now, every surface was covered in grit, termites defecating bits of what was left of our home. They came with drills, in masks and goggles, teetered on ladders, did whatever they did to repair the holes. We rested assured the blight was gone. 2 months later, we find them on an August day, beating wings on the cool tile floor, in the hamper, in the drawers. One catches in my clothes, more swim in the shallows of the shower, fallen from the overheated rafters. I wheeled the spray and washed them down the drain. The next day there are more. The structure is being eaten, the beams are weakened. Suddenly we find ourselves falling through the foundation, our marriage collapsing, while we were busy looking elsewhere. And that's the first one. Thank you. And then, since I have to make up my mind, I decided to go with one for my father that was in the previous issue. I think it was in the fall issue. And my father was a professor of public administration, but he had his doctorate in political science. And yet he was a very innocent man who really believed in public service. So I'm glad that he hasn't been here the last 4 years, really. And I'm looking forward sort of to tomorrow, we'll see. But this one I wrote for him, and it's called Punchline. Don't buy any green bananas was my father's favorite joke right to the end. He was not one to waste food or emotions. A child of the Depression, his family had time only for the practical. The inside of a banana peel worked for a quick shoe shine, he told me. He stocked up only on what would keep, dry goods, dates, and prunes that later I ingested, choking down his lessons, seeking absolution or a sign, ignoring the banana, finally peeking, still hanging from a hook, there in his kitchen, a punchline. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Betsy. And
thank you
everyone for sharing your work and for coming out to support the release of George's book. It's really great. And for those of you who are in the audience and might not be familiar with Sheila-Na-Gig, you can find all these wonderful writers at Sheila-Na-Gig-blog.com. If you just type Sheila-Na-Gig into any search engine, you're going to find us. So thank you all for being here.